June 323 BC. A 32-year-old man lies shaking with fever in a Babylonian bedchamber. In just a decade, he has conquered millions of square miles and never lost a single battle. But as his breath slows, the largest empire on Earth is about to be left without a leader. 3 decades earlier, the city-states of Greece viewed the northern kingdom of Macedonia as a rugged backwater. That changed under King Philip II. Philip overhauled the Macedonian military, equipping his infantry with 18-foot pikes called sarissas. Packed into a formation known as a phalanx, his soldiers presented an impenetrable wall of iron that unified Greece under his command. King Philip wanted his heir to possess a supreme intellect to match his military might. When Alexander turned 13, Philip hired the philosopher Aristotle as his private tutor. For 3 years, Aristotle drilled the prince in logic, art, and philosophy, training him to analyze complex problems with cold, strategic precision. While his father built his intellect, his mother, Olympias, molded his psychology. She convinced the boy he was of divine lineage, a direct descendant of the gods. This conditioning created an unshakable self-belief. When a 10-year-old Alexander noticed a wild horse named Bucephalus was afraid of its own shadow, he turned the animal towards the sun to calm it. He rode the horse effortlessly, providing the first public evidence of his extraordinary willpower. The king who built this power was suddenly eliminated. Philip was assassinated by his own bodyguard, leaving his 20-year-old son to seize the throne. Alexander immediately executed his rivals and consolidated control, inheriting his father's unfulfilled objective, a massive invasion of the Persian Empire. Alexander's trajectory grew out of a specific alignment of elite philosophical logic, absolute military supremacy, and a conviction in his own divinity. In 334 BC, Alexander led his forces across the Hellespont into Asia Minor. He had already secured the Greek homeland through ruthless purges, destroying the city of Thebes and selling its survivors into slavery to ensure total obedience from his allies. This data illustrates the disparity between the two powers. On the left is Alexander's expeditionary force of 40,000 men. On the right is the Persian Empire, a superpower with vast wealth and an army estimated at over 100,000 soldiers under King Darius III. Alexander countered his numerical disadvantage with aggressive tactical geometry. Instead of matching the width of the Persian lines, he arranged his elite cavalry into a concentrated wedge formation. Leading from the front, he used this wedge to pierce the enemy line at its most vulnerable point. This strategy yielded rapid victories at the river Granicus and Issus. By striking with intense speed, Alexander threw the Persian ranks into chaos. Rather than face this Macedonian king in close combat, the Persian leadership repeatedly abandoned the battlefield. The climactic showdown occurred on the plains of Gaugamela. Facing an army that doubled his own, Alexander created a gap in the Persian center. He led a cavalry charge straight at Darius, a direct assault that permanently shattered the Persian command structure and forced the great king to flee one final time. Alexander dismantled the world's greatest superpower by combining his father's impenetrable infantry tactics with his own fearless, highly calculated psychological warfare. After defeating the Persian army, Alexander's goals evolved. He began to absorb and govern the territories he had conquered, marching into Egypt, where he was welcomed as a liberator. During a journey deep into the desert to the temple of the oracle at Siwa, Egyptian priests crowned him pharaoh. They welcomed him as the son of Amun, the king of the gods, solidifying his belief in his own divinity. Advancing eastward, he ordered the burning of Persepolis, erasing the seat of the old regime. But he then sat upon the Persian throne himself. He adopted Persian dress, appointed Persian governors, and intermarried with local princesses to fuse the two cultures. These policies triggered a backlash from his Macedonian veterans. When Alexander began requiring his subjects to perform proskynesis, bowing before the king, his Greek generals were outraged. To them, bowing was a gesture reserved for the gods, making Alexander's new court rituals appear blasphemous. Despite the resentment, he pushed his exhausted army across the Hindu Kush and into India. They engaged in brutal combat at the river Hydaspes, taking heavy casualties to defeat King Porus and his line of armored war elephants. At the Bias River, the soldiers reached their breaking point. After 8 years and thousands of miles, they refused to march any further. Forced to turn back, Alexander's paranoia grew. He ordered the executions of his most loyal commanders, including Parnomian and the man who saved his life in battle, Clitus. As Alexander's physical empire reached the edge of the known world, his obsessive belief in his own divinity fractured the inner circle that had sustained his rise. Following a grueling march through the desert that killed many of his survivors, Alexander returned to the capital of Babylon. He immediately began plotting naval campaigns to conquer Arabia. Those campaigns never began. Following a sudden fever, Alexander died at 32 years old. He left behind a territory spanning from Greece to India, but provided no clear successor or plan for governing it. This map shows the political fallout. Without his central authority, the empire rapidly cracked into separate kingdoms. His generals turned on one another in the wars of the successors, murdering Alexander's heirs and tearing the unified state apart. Even his body became a political tool. While en route to Macedonia for burial, his sarcophagus was hijacked and diverted to Egypt to legitimize a rival general's rule. The location of his final tomb remains a mystery. The collapse of his political empire stood in contrast to his ultimate cultural reach. His campaigns initiated the Hellenistic Age, when Greek philosophy and art fused with Eastern traditions. Modern cities like Alexandria in Egypt remain as physical evidence of the cultural synthesis he engineered. Alexander the Great's ultimate legacy was the permanent alteration of human history itself. He proved that a single, relentlessly ambitious mind could force the world into a new shape, even if that ambition ultimately consumed him.